Good afternoon. This is Animal Uncontrol. Welcome to MuttHeads. Today's topic is dog policy and how policy can differ from law, particularly inside the Mutt matrix or the Muttrix, as I call it. What we're confronting is not just a group of people with a love for animals. It's a proselytizing religion, and it's a political movement. I call it a religion for two reasons. Two key aspects are, one, it has a belief system based almost entirely on faith, and two, it has immutable ideals. Now we're going to get into the second part of the Muttrix, which is the political movement indicated here, the Mutt political arm, if you will. I would like to discuss a classic case from 2007 and all the resulting litigation that resulted from that. Back in 2007, Dominic Solesky, this is Dominic here with his dad, Tony. Now, this was 6 or 7 years after the dog attack. When Dominic was 10, he was mauled by a neighborhood pit bull. The short version of what happened is Dominic and his friend, whose name was Scotty, I believe, Dominic and Scotty were playing tag in the neighborhood, and they'd gotten separated, and a penned-up pit bull attacked Scotty. Didn't injure him too badly, tore him up pretty good. So the dog owner, put the dog back in the pen, and he threatened Scotty. He told him, "Don't tell anyone what happened, or I'm going to get you." Now, a few minutes later, the same dog got loose again and attacked Dominic. It tore open his femoral artery, and he almost bled to death. He did survive and have a full or near full recovery. Now, in response to that, his parents, his dad, Tony, and his mom, Irene, basically, they agitated for changes to the legal code. Specifically, they wanted pit bulls declared per se dangerous. None of this stuff that, Fido gets off scot-free the first time or the second time or the third time. No, pit bulls are per se dangerous. A loose pit bull presents a danger. So if you go through this, I'm looking at Dog's Bite. If you go through all this I believe after several years of agitating for these laws, in 2012, the Maryland Supreme Court ruled that yes, pit bulls are per se dangerous. I'm oversimplifying, but that was the gist of it. Meaning that pit bull owners face strict liability the first attack. Now, what that did was that drew fire from this. The Muttrix spun into action and fought that like crazy, just like they fight every dog law, particularly pit bull bans. Now, to make a long story short here, in 2014, the Maryland governor, he signed Senate Bill 247, abrogating the Court of Appeals of Maryland's decision in Tracy v. Solesky. The 2012 decision declared pit bulls inherently dangerous and attached strict liability when a pit bull attacks a person. This liability extended to landlords when a tenant's pit bull attacks. That was the, gist of the ruling. So this was only in effect for a couple of years before it was abrogated. That's a fancy word. What does abrogate means? It means to abolish by authoritative action. So the legislature and the governor said, no, pit bulls are not inherently dangerous. They're nanny dogs. So I would like to segue into the, in about the time all that was going down, the initial court ruling and all that, Tony, Dominic's dad, was on a podcast with a man named Douglas Wolf. And Douglas got into the space because his granddaughter was mauled by a pit bull. I don't believe he is still in the space. So he did a half hour, isn't really an interview, a conversation with Tony about how, all of this sort of went down and observations that he had. And I'm going to, link this podcast, in the link description. I want everybody to listen to it in its entirety. It's very, very informative. Tony is a superstar, literally. So I have I want to listen to a few excerpts of this. Okay, so I want to go back to, let's see, 8:54. Let's go here. 5. Let's start listening here.
Fame is now deceased George Tracy up in Trackhaven, Pennsylvania. So I have an extensive career of going around with show dog guys and with field trial dogs, and I know what dogs are bred to do. And pit bulls are bred to fight.
I thought they were bred to nanny human kids, but I'll take his word for it.
And for some reason, lo and behold, once their plight, and they have a horrible plight and horrible life, became part of the people that save dogs, and they became empathetic for the plight of these dogs, they began to try to morph these dogs into something they're not, which is a domestic family pet.
Bingo.
They simply are not. And that is why we are getting the outcomes that we have. So how did that happen? Well, it happened because as governments lost the money that they needed to run their animal care shelters, they deferred to animal advocates.
Now, let me pause here for a moment. Why was this defunded? Or why did it lack funding? One point I like to make is that all these dog problems present an excellent revenue opportunity for the government. For example, barking tickets. I want to give a shout out to Jay Sims in the Discord. They brought up the point that, if every barking dog, resulted in, say, $100 ticket, a cop could write a dozen barking tickets in an hour and then just spend the rest of the day in Dunkin' Donuts. You can make this pay for itself, but the thing is, they don't want to do this, okay? The Muttrix doesn't want that to happen. They want the problem to continue, mainly because from their perspective, it's not a problem. Like, oh, we don't have any money. No, it's a question of priority.
It's who said, look, you let us have the building, you do the public maintenance on it through the government, we will run the shelter, we'll use outside funding, and we will rescue dogs and take care of all your problems. And the government and local officials throughout the country said that's a great idea. But they did one thing. They allowed these people to do that, and my wife is Greek, so I'll say this, beware of Greeks bearing gifts. They allowed these people to run these shelters without the oversight that they needed and without the public health.
Yeah, without any oversight. Doesn't that sound familiar? Service dog fraud, cough, cough, cough.
Charter guidelines that they needed, and slowly but surely they were taken over by people who really don't have lives outside of animals, who really, I'm talking by and large, who put animals before human beings. And with
bingo, dogs first. Because really, you use the word animal. What does animal really mean in this context? They mean dogs. So what happened? at least that branch, our animal control branch of our, public health authorities, got taken over by this. They were converged by the Mutt matrix, and their only priority is the best interest of dogs. That's it.
Children started to get attacked, as did my son. Counterintuitively, government officials went to the animal people because in the past they really did have a public safety background where animal advocacy was a secondary profession. And now, lo and behold, they go to these people and they come up with all these diluted animal first things, and it's
bingo, dogs first.
Throughout the country, and it's prolific because the boards, organizations of all these animal rights and all these animal control organizations throughout our country are chaired and housed and run and deferred to for public policy by public officials who don't realize that these people do not have a vocation of public safety. They do not have a public safety background. And if you even look at their amicus briefs, they state that we are animal advocates.
Right. So it's not even a secret. This is not some deep conspiracy. They're dogs first, and they're actually fairly transparent about it. And most of us know, I've encountered this, probably most of the folks have. If you call animal control, what's their top priority? Oh, is a dog okay? You say, you know what, Fido just ate a 2-year-old. It's like, gee, I hope it didn't make Fido sick. That would be bad.
That's what they do. And so when I went into court and we tried to try our case, we were headed off at every impasse as animal discrimination, all these absurd things that had nothing to do with what a normal person would think should be going on.
There, see that? It was bringing up doggy racism. Right? Because see, if your dog's first, actually discriminating against a breed is actually worse than being racist, right? See, BSL is racist when you equate dogs to human beings. This is one reason why I despise these ADEP people, because what they do is they say that dogs are either at or above human beings in the hierarchy. Now, if that's true, banning pit bulls or whatever dog breed you don't like becomes either very difficult at best, if not impossible, at least under our legal and political system.
We're fortunate in Maryland that it got to the highest court in Maryland, and now suddenly, people realize that 2/3 of Marylanders don't even own a dog. And once they're finding out that, oh, we're a one-free bite state, oh, they have this certain breed of dog out there that people are pushing and rescuing. And so I'm jumping around a little bit, but it all culminates 2 days ago in my own neighborhood. I'm walking down the street, and here's a loose pit bull. And there's this guy standing in the doorway, and he's letting his dog defecate and urinate about 3 doors down in the row homes, very tight postage stamp sized lawns. And I said to him, hey, I spoke to you before. I said, I told you that dog should be on a leash. Well, here comes the dog running at me. I try to get in a safe position, but I try not to be too aggressive looking at a dog.
Oh, come on. Fido just wanted to say hi.
Dog comes up. Fortunately, it was friendly, sniffed around, looked in this dog's eyes. It was detached. The dog sits down. I can see it's unspayed, it's unneutered. And I'm giving the guy the lecture about, you need to have your dog leashed. I said, and by the way, you know who I am. You know what I've been through. You know my son. We've talked before. Right now, your landlord and you are exposed to strict liability for your dog, and you could be sued even for what you're doing right now. You're creating a danger, a public danger. You have children around here. He said to me, sued. He said, I am filing for bankruptcy anyway. Now, the guy was not rude. He was not impolite. He was just a typically detached human being. So fast forward, I call animal control in Baltimore County, and I explain to them what the situation is, who I am, and I tell them that this is an at-risk situation because we have 2 daycares in our neighborhood, which are always children under 5. Next door to this guy, there's 2 children under the age of 7 and across the street. And the animal control officer said to me, well, you have to come in and fill out an affidavit and then go get it notarized. I said,
Yeah, they love to burden victims like that. Like, where else or in what other space is a law enforced that way? None.
well, this should be a priority call. He said, well, actually, our priority would be animal cruelty.
Ha ha! Bingo. Ding, ding, ding. We have a winner.
Well, I used a choice word because I lost my cool. I said, let me tell you something. I know that you're administering to your office, but you're wrong. You are under the health department, and your first priority is to protect the health, welfare, and safety of the public. And while I am concerned about an animal that doesn't have water, if it dies of thirst, that is irrelevant to your first duty, which is to make the public whole. So you're telling me that you have the at-risk group of children, 2 daycares, and the age group, and you're telling me that's not a priority call? He said, that law that happened in Maryland doesn't affect us locally. I said,
yeah. See, like when you're in Maryland, like the state laws of Maryland really don't impact you in Maryland, according to them. See, this is a thought process here. They're going to do whatever it takes to get Fido off the hook. They're going to like conspicuously avoid, prosecuting any dog law. Forget about pit bulls. It doesn't matter what the law says. They're going to do whatever they want. They're going to pursue their priority, which is dogs first. So if Fido wants to eat a few of those kids, say in one of those daycares, hey, the dog got what he wanted. And that's the only thing that matters to them.
are you telling me that's the law that you respond to animal cruelty, or are you telling me that that is your policy? He said, that's our policy. I said, well, policy and law are different. I said,
well, yeah, policy and law are different. I mean, law is what's written down in black letter, but policy is what you or the enforcement people actually do. And you see this in other areas of law also. For example, marijuana legalization. Marijuana is illegal at the federal level. However, many states have chosen to legalize it. My small Florida city has at least 3 pot stores that I know of. So you're thinking, why aren't the feds busting this? And they're not, because the policy is if the state chooses to legalize it, the federal government policy is that if the state chooses to legalize it, just let it slide. Now, you can get into trouble if you go onto a federal property. Like, for example, if you buy a dime bag legally, but then go into a post office and they catch you, that's potentially a federal crime because that post office is federal property. Or to a national park, or really any property owned by the federal government. So you got to watch it. But in any case, the policy is to ignore the federal law when the state law differs, at least in that space.
Be hearing from the county executive in 10 minutes. So I called the county executive, and immediately when I told them I was willing to go to the paper and tell them that that we're under the health department and there's nothing in the health department charter that says anything other than the health, welfare, and safety of the public.
Right. So he's got to escalate it. He reports the infraction to animal control, and they're like, so then he escalates to the county executive, and he has to threaten to go to the media. Right. That's how corrupt this system is. This Muttrix. Okay. It's just a cesspool of corruption.
Like, I got a quick response. The person's been cited, and they are on notice now that whether they think so or not, or whatever their policies are, that right now in Baltimore County, Maryland, you better know that you're under the health department, and your first thing better be to protect the health, welfare, and safety of the public. So it's been taken care of, because now I'm able to strong arm these people who are really just doing what they're told, instead of the animal advocates who have lost a little bit of bite here in Maryland. based on, now to the final thing, our testimony. And when I testified, that's what my mantra was, that this is a public health and safety issue, and that nothing is going to be born of success that does not make first the priority of human beings. And
see, bingo. Okay, you're never going to be successful unless you prioritize people first. Okay? Listen up, you ADEP morons. As long as you put dogs first, you are never going to solve any of these problems. Never.
if you do anything else, then you are outside of your charter of every municipality. So fast forward, I call animal control. I used a choice word because I lost, doesn't affect us locally. I said, well, are you telling me that's the law that you respond to animal cruelty, or are you telling me that that is your policy? He said, that's our policy. I said, well, policy and law are different. I can only tell you, I think it was to buy time because they're overwhelmed, financial stake in it. And so what it looks like is going to happen here in Maryland is they're going to wait till January 2013. And I would think that was, I'm only speculating now, I can't put thoughts in their minds, but I can only tell you, I think it was to buy time because they're overwhelmed with just all of the subterfuge that's out there. And that's great because now they know how I feel and they understand what's going on. And I think the good thing that's going to come of that is by the time they go to change the law, 6 or 7 months are going to pass in which people are going to be under that law, and it's going to really weed out the people who aren't properly positioned in the first place to have these dogs. And so it may allow them, when they have this session, to come up with something that is a little more in keeping with the times in January 2013. And there's always a possibility that they will still realize it's such a quagmire and that they're in for more than their talent base, that they'll let it die in committee, except for the first time in a state, unlike what happened to you in Texas, it'll die in committee to our favor rather than to our disfavor. I'm sorry I went on so long. I'm glad.
Okay. You know, I'm going to include this podcast in the video description, and I suggest everyone listen to it in its entirety. Very informative. But it illustrates, you know, how difficult it is to get anything done in this space because, again, of all these dogs first attitudes that have been infused into our institutions. You heard the answer he got. Our priority is animal welfare. Or what did he say? I was cruelty. Yeah, all those people need to be fired. All of them. Probably what should happen is we need to drain the swamp. Just fire them all and start over. The best thing to do. The Mutt Matrix. Think about it. This is animal uncontrol, and as always, people first.